You have seen the videos. A silverback sitting peacefully in the forest, surrounded by his family, pulling leaves from a branch with hands that look almost human. Tourists photograph him from 30 feet away and call it a spiritual experience. Researchers spend careers sitting near him, speaking softly, moving slowly, building what they describe as trust. The entire public image of the silverback gorilla has been constructed around one word: gentle. That word is doing an enormous amount of dangerous work. The silverback gorilla is not gentle. It is controlled. There is a difference so significant that confusing the two has sent people to hospitals and, in documented cases, to morgues. The control is real. The restraint is real. The silverback chooses, constantly and deliberately, not to deploy what it is physically capable of. But the capability underneath that restraint is something so far outside the range of human physical experience that most people cannot conceptualize it accurately even when given the numbers directly. Here are the numbers. An adult male silverback gorilla weighs between 300 and 500 pounds. The largest individuals on record have exceeded 600 pounds. That weight is not distributed the way human weight is distributed. A gorilla's body is built around one central biological priority that evolution has been refining for millions of years: raw physical power. The muscle density of a gorilla exceeds that of a human being by a factor that researchers estimate at 4 to 9 times, depending on the muscle group being measured. The arms are the most extreme example. A silverback's arm span reaches up to 9 feet. The muscles that drive those arms are built for pulling, climbing, and displaying, functions that require explosive, sustained force generation that human musculature simply does not approach. The bite force of a silverback gorilla is estimated at approximately 300 pounds per square inch. For comparison, a lion's bite force is around 650 pounds per square inch. A human's is approximately 160. The gorilla bites with 8 times the force of a human being and twice the force of a lion. The canine teeth that deliver that bite extend to lengths of up to 2 inches in adult males. They are not used for eating. Gorillas are predominantly herbivores. Those canines exist for one purpose only: display in combat. When a silverback charges, it does so at speeds reaching 25 miles per hour. It covers ground with a knuckle-walking gait that generates momentum from a body mass. That, at full speed, produces impact forces comparable to a vehicle collision. Rangers who have been in the path of a full silverback charge and survived describe it as a physical event, not just a visual one. The ground shakes. The vocalization, a deep, resonant roar combined with chest beating that can be heard over a mile away, hits the body as much as the ears. The chest beating itself is not symbolic. The cupped hands striking the chest produce a boom that carries through the forest as an acoustic demonstration of physical size and power. Researchers have measured the sound. It is not a soft thump. It is a concussive report that functions as an honest biological signal because only an animal with a chest large enough and muscles powerful enough can produce it at full volume. And then there is what the hands can do. A gorilla's grip strength has been estimated at over 1,300 pounds. Researchers attempting to measure it directly have found that standard dynamometers designed for measuring human grip are simply insufficient for the task. The instruments max out. What is known from structural analysis and behavioral observation is that a silverback can bend iron bars, tear apart hardwood branches with its bare hands, and in documented cases involving captive animals, has dismantled enclosure structures that were engineered to withstand those forces, not over time, with sustained effort, in moments with apparently minimal exertion. A human being in a silverback's grip is not in danger. They are already injured. The question is only how severely. Now understand what actually governs this power, because the power itself is only half of what makes the silverback terrifying. Silverback gorillas are the dominant males of their family group. That dominance is not symbolic. It is the organizing principle of everything that happens within the troop. The silverback decides when the group moves, where it feeds, how it responds to threats, and who has access to reproductive females. Every other member of the troop exists in a defined relationship to the silverback's authority, and that authority is maintained not primarily through constant physical aggression, but through presence, display, and the ever-present knowledge of what the silverback could do if he chose to. This is not a peaceful arrangement. It is a controlled arrangement. The peace is conditional on every member of the troop continuously reading the silverback's behavioral signals correctly and responding appropriately. When those signals are misread, when a young male challenges too directly or a human observer moves in a way that the silverback's assessment system classifies as a threat, the response is not graduated. It is immediate and total. The charge is the most widely documented silverback behavior in wildlife photography and film. What is less widely understood is that there are 2 categories of charge, and that distinguishing between them in the moment is something experienced researchers describe as genuinely difficult even after years of fieldwork. The bluff charge is a display. The silverback runs toward the threat, vocalizes, beats his chest, and stops short of contact. Its purpose is to assess the threat's response and to communicate physical capability without incurring the costs of actual combat. A correct response from the target, remaining still, avoiding direct eye contact, making yourself appear small and non-threatening, can terminate the charge without contact. An incorrect response, running, making eye contact, raising arms, vocalizing back, can escalate a bluff charge into a contact charge instantly. The contact charge does not stop, and by the time you can distinguish which type of charge is coming, you have approximately 2 to 3 seconds to respond correctly before the question becomes irrelevant. Experienced guerrilla trackers in Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo spend months being trained specifically in how to read silverback body language before they are permitted to guide tourists near habituated guerrilla groups. The training covers the pre-charge signals, the vocalization types, the ear and brow positions, the direction of gaze, the way the silverback holds his body in the seconds before he commits to movement. It is an extensive curriculum of behavioral reading that the trackers apply continuously during every guerrilla encounter. Tourists who spend 1 hour near a guerrilla group are safe largely because the people around them have dedicated their professional lives to reading an animal that most visitors are completely unable to read themselves. Remove the trained tracker. Remove the habituation process that has conditioned a specific guerrilla group to tolerate specific types of human presence. Put a naive human conditioned to accept. The outcome is not uncertain. The habituation process itself reveals how conditional the safety of guerrilla tourism actually is. Habituating a wild guerrilla group to human presence takes years of painstaking work by researchers who approach the group daily, maintain specific behavioral protocols on every visit, and accept that the process can be set back dramatically by a single interaction that the gorilla responds badly to. The habituation is not a transformation of the animal's nature. It is the construction of a narrow behavioral corridor within which the silverback tolerates human presence under specific controlled conditions. Step outside that corridor in terms of behavior, proximity, timing, or the specific individuals the silverback has been conditioned to accept, and the corridor closes. The silverback does not distinguish between a rule violation and a threat. It distinguishes between what falls within its acceptance threshold and what does not. What falls outside that threshold receives the response that millions of years of evolution have produced for threats to a 400-pound primates family group. The 2016 Harambe incident at the Cincinnati Zoo placed the silverback gorilla into global public consciousness in a way that generated enormous emotional response and almost no accurate understanding of what the footage actually showed. A 3-year-old child fell into the gorilla enclosure, and Harambe, a 17-year-old male silverback weighing approximately 440 pounds, interacted with the child for approximately 10 minutes before zoo staff made the decision to shoot him. The debate that followed focused almost entirely on whether the shooting was necessary. What received almost no analytical attention was what the footage of those 10 minutes actually documented about silverback gorilla behavior. Harambe was not attacking the child during most of those 10 minutes. He was doing something more complex and, in certain respects, more alarming. He was moving the child. He was responding to the crowd noise above the enclosure, which was generating stress responses in him that were visible in his body language to anyone trained to read it. He dragged the child through the water of the moat at speeds and with a grip that left the child uninjured only because Harambe had not applied his actual grip strength to the situation. The child weighed approximately 30 pounds. Harambe weighed 440. The same motion that moved the child gently through the water could have produced a categorically different outcome with a fractional increase in the force applied. The zoo's decision was made by people who understood exactly what a stressed silverback in an escalating situation was capable of. The public response was made largely by people who watched a gorilla not killing a child and concluded that it would not have killed the child. These are not the same conclusion. The Congo Basin, Rwanda, and Uganda are the primary ranges of the mountain gorilla, the most studied wild silverback population on Earth. In these forests, human-gorilla conflict occurs with a regularity that the conservation literature addresses carefully, and the wildlife tourism industry addresses carefully from the opposite direction. Farmers whose crops border gorilla habitat lose food to gorilla raids. Communities living near gorilla range occasionally encounter silverbacks outside of managed tourism contexts. The outcomes of these unmanaged encounters follow a consistent and predictable pattern. A silverback that has not been habituated to human presence, that encounters a human being in a context it reads as threatening to itself or its group, does not wait for clarification of intent. It responds to what it perceives. And what an unhabituated wild silverback perceives when it encounters a human being is a potential threat in its territory. The response to that perception is not proportional in any human sense of the word. It is total. Conservation workers documenting human-gorilla conflict in the buffer zones between gorilla habitat and agricultural land describe incidents with a pattern that experienced rangers recognize immediately. A farmer encounters a silverback unexpectedly at close range. The farmer runs. Running is the worst possible response because it activates the chase response in the gorilla and signals the human's vulnerability simultaneously. The gorilla pursues. What follows is documented in medical records that conservation organizations compile as part of their human-wildlife conflict monitoring. The injuries in these cases are not the injuries of an animal that is trying to warn. They are the injuries of an animal that is committed to a physical response. Broken bones from single strikes, lacerations from canine teeth that are documented in centimeters of depth rather than surface wounds. Crush injuries from grappling. These are the injuries produced by an animal exercising its physical capability at levels that are still almost certainly below its actual maximum. The gap between what a silverback gorilla can do and what the ones that most people have ever seen have chosen to do is the gap that wildlife tourism has built an industry around. It is a real gap. The restraint of habituated silverbacks in managed encounters is genuine, but it exists because of years of carefully maintained behavioral conditioning, because of the constant presence of trained trackers reading every signal the animal produces, and because the silverbacks themselves have, for reasons rooted in their own social and cognitive processing, decided that these specific humans in these specific circumstances fall within their tolerance threshold. The day that calculation changes is the day the gap closes. Not gradually, not with warning signs that a tourist would recognize. Instantly, completely, and with the full application of a physical capability that no human being who has ever encountered it at full expression has described in the past tense. The silverback is not gentle. It is the most powerful land animal you will ever stand near. And the distance between standing near one and the worst outcome imaginable is a behavioral threshold that the gorilla sets and the gorilla monitors, and the gorilla can change without a moment's notice. Everything you felt in that forest, that sense of connection, that feeling of being accepted, that belief that the gorilla saw something in you and chose peace was real. And it was entirely, completely, and always the gorilla's choice to make.